I think be briefer than other speakers because obviously in the course of speaking to my briefing paper I'm a little bit lost in that I didn't get time to do one with the preparations for this conference. However, also I think there is a question of people's practical involvement in the anti-war movement on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure that in the course of that, Commons have had the chance already to form pretty firm opinions about the question of solidarity, about the question of the ability of the anti-war movement in this country to fight on two fronts, and presumably that's why the majority of you were in this room. So I just want to make some very brief points about the statement that we've produced as a founding document for Hopi, which I think has some rough edges, which have been addressed by some of the amendments, I think very usefully, and has, in the nature of it, it's a compromise document. However, I think it has at its core, which is essential to underline, this idea of independent working class politics, i.e. that yes, certain groups, certain classes, certain layers in society can be thrown into episodic opposition to imperialism because of all sorts of geopolitical, economic questions. But if we're looking for the force, which is a consistent anti-imperialist force in the world today, at the core of such a force must be the working class. The working class and its allies, working class and those movements that it draws to its side. Yeah? Yes, that means, of course, not splendid isolation. It is permissible under those circumstances with that approach to form an alliance temporarily with anybody. You can form an alliance with Satan, all right, as long as you don't dress Satan up as an angel. All right? This is clearly a problem that we've encountered in terms of our work so far in the anti-war movement. That there must be no subordination of working class, democratic, secular principles in order to forge such an alliance. All right? Because then we're moving away from the field of principle politics into something very different, aren't we? Now, it's very strange, really, that we have to come to a meeting like this. It's very strange that we have an argument with the officers of the Stop the War Coalition about these things that should be basic, that should be in our DNA as activists, DNA as working class activists, as socialists, as consistent fighters for against the war, against imperialist war. It should be bleeding obvious, but it isn't. All right, it isn't, and that is why this meeting is so important. That is why this meeting has been convened. That is why Hopi exists. When we state those principles, we're told by the Stop the War Coalition, as presently constituted, that Hopi is thus presenting itself as a political rival to its approach, to its platform. Well, we have to say, judging on the AGM and judging on the comments we've seen so far, judging how the message of the Stop the War Coalition officers, and in particular the comments of the Socialist Workers' Party, has percolated down to the branches, and the shit that has been thrown against Hopi and leading individuals in Hopi subsequent to that disgraceful decision to exclude Hopi from the Stop the War Coalition, we have to say that yes, in that sense, therefore, yes, Hopi is a political rival, a political alternative centre to what currently constitutes the leadership of the Stop the War Coalition. All right? They recognise it as a challenge to them, and I think we ought to be quite clear now that the people gathered in this room, the approach that is embodied in the founding document, represents a political challenge to their rotten, rotten method. We ought to characterise their leadership of the anti-war movement as misleadership. All right? They have palpably failed. One, to stop the war, and two, really, to leave anything strong in terms of a political residue, which is in a fighting fit shape to fight the advance towards the next war. All right? Instead of a political perspective that can mobilise in the way that I've described, independent politics, really we've had Grand Old Duke of York marches. All right? Literally from the platforms, we've had comments of the Stop the War Coalition, people like Lindsay German saying, we'll just carry on marching. All right? The next war they prepare, we'll march against that one. And we'll march, I don't know whether they have shares in some I don't know, somebody who make exactly sports footwear or something, I don't know, but that is their one operative policy for fighting war. Let's march. All right? Now, we have to be clear about what happened in terms of those gargantuan demonstrations against looming war with Iraq. This was a mass phenomena, but it was politically very shallow. It sort of rushed into the show and rushed out again fairly quickly. And I think there was bound to be an ebb in the movement, whoever was leading the anti-war movement at that time. After all, I mean, what allowed mass action to break through as well was a fundamental split in the British establishment, that allowed people mass discontent to find expression on the streets, undoubtedly. But what was required in that movement was politics. What was required was a degree of differentiation. Instead, what we were told is that the only principle that the Stop the War Coalition leadership holds fast to is unity. Is unity. And what they mean by unity is not unity with socialists or progressives, or unity with the right. And the left must subordinate its politics, its approach, its independent programme to ensure that the right feel comfortable when they stand on Stop the War Coalition platforms. That Charles Kennedy feels comfortable. But when Iranian working class activists are excluded from Stop the War Coalition platforms. Very briefly to finish, look, the founding statement, whether it does it clumsily, whether it does it well, whether it does it skillfully, what the founding statement is attempting to say is that we can have unity in a fight against impending imperialist war, but unity with principles. We don't just get the masses and then somehow try to infect them with our principles by innuendo. All right? We start with principles and we go to masses of people with them. And to be honest with you, I'm very optimistic about it, because from the limited amount of work we've done so far, I think this clear message that we can walk and chew gum, all right? That we can be implacably against imperialist intervention in Iran, and at the same time against its regime, to understand that that is not a consistent ally of ours in any sense, that it is likely to accommodate to imperialism, and the real steadfast opponents of imperialism are actually to be found in the ranks of the people that the regime is oppressing, all right? I don't think that's a hard message to get across to working people, to so-called ordinary people in Britain today. I think it was disgusting when a comrade at the Stop the War Coalition stood up and told us, you can't give people that two-pronged message because you'll just confuse them. All right? Well, my God, if people can't understand, if masses of people in Britain today cannot understand a message with a level of complexity of that, then let's. I mean, the pubs are open. What are we doing here? I mean, seriously. Well, that is the politics of contempt of ordinary people. Of course, they can understand that. In fact, they readily grasp it. They're prepared to listen to it. And our challenge, really, from this successful conference, all right, and I'm not saying it's choreographed, but I hope it'll be a successful conference, is to move from that preparedness of listening of ordinary people, that the fact that they understand, to move them to our active partisan involvement in the campaign. And that implies so many things, including a broader political perspective. I haven't got time to go on about that. Thank you.